Yeah.
Oh, really?
Look at all this.
Earlier in the day.
There's a White House up caddy corner back. Watching the back side, I could hear like 5 or 6 people up there just, so well, I wonder how long they're going to be here before we can go back. This and that and the other. And then one of them decided he was going to come down and sneak up and look in the windows to see what was going on, and he got within about 10 feet of me. I said, well, maybe you should call it a night like we asked you to. Oh, yep, that's what we're going to do. Or maybe you should just call it a night like we asked you to. Yeah. That sounds like a great idea, right? All right, cool.
So let's talk about Bryan Kohberger's visual snow syndrome and if that will make its way into its defense that his 57-year-old public defender puts forth. Also, I want to talk about the 1122 King Road house a little bit more, about one of the friends who said she didn't need a code to get in the front door. And let's talk about noise complaints and Bryan's stalking and what he may have seen when he was hanging out in the middle of the night, apparently late at night, around the 1122 King Road house after moving out west from Pennsylvania. And I want to go over these writings online that were found from Bryan. Too bad I can't play his rap song. Well, it's probably a good thing I can't play his rap song. I just tried to upload it on TikTok and no go, copyrights galore. So I'm sure YouTube wouldn't like it either. You're not missing anything. But people have found his online writings from when he was a 14 to 17-year-old, and just the mental torment that Bryan describes going through. It kind of lends itself as to why Bryan suffered from insomnia and why he may have been awake in the middle of the night, passing off his misery to others. First off, it's no secret that the 1122 King Road house was a party house. As you just witnessed in that video from May 5th, it's ironic that certain people used the 1122 King Road house as a sort of safe haven to escape to when they were fleeing cops who responded to a noise complaint nearby. Even though Kaylee's dad, Steve Gonzalez, says that Bryan Kohberger had been in town about a year, it's my belief that Bryan moved out west from Pennsylvania on exactly Saturday, June 25th, because that's the day a woman whom I believe is Bryan's mom posted that information on Reddit. So this was a big party house, and despite Kaylee's sister, Olivia, saying that the night of the crimes, the horrific crimes, the girls locked up the house, they let Murphy the dog out to go to the bathroom, they locked up the house, they did everything right. I wonder to myself, did Bryan Kohberger, in all his stalking, did he realize the front door was sometimes open, not engaged with a code? That is what Zaina and Ethan's friend, Madison Fitzgerald, told Fox News, that she was able to often walk into the front door of the King Road house because the door was open. She didn't have to put in a code. When she was asked if she used the sliding glass door to enter the home or if she used the front door.
I was very close with Xana and Ethan. It was Xana's home, and she was just the most welcoming and kind person that I'd ever known. A lot of people came in and out of that house just because of how kind all 4 of them were, and welcoming to have visitors and guests over all the time. There were 2 points of entry to the house. Most frequently, people used the door that was located on the basement, and then you took a set of stairs to get to the main floor. When I would go there, the code wouldn't be activated, so we could just open the door and get in.
It makes sense for her to say she often used the front door because seeing the hill where the sliding glass door is, it's kind of not necessarily easy to navigate, so it makes sense if people would use the front door more, especially if it were open. And of course, all of these victims, all of these residents should have been able to leave their front door unlocked if they wanted to. Many people in Moscow, Idaho said they did the same things before November 13th, 2022. The victims should have been able to leave their door unlocked and not expect a madman to come in there and harm them. And now we see the beginnings and the creations of this madman by his writings from age 14 to 17 on this tapatalk.com website. The manner in which Bryan Kohberger finishes his rantings on that website as a 17-year-old is chilling. But as for that footage you saw in the opening, it was 1 month before Bryan moved to Washington. that cops responded to a noise complaint at a house next door. It was May 5th, 2022, around midnight. 3 officers responded to that home. I'm not going to give any names of anyone who called in noise complaints, nor the houses they responded to. But it was a large party, and some of those folks, as you can see, ran over to the 1122 King Road house. You could see some of them standing up there on the balcony. The cops said they were waiting to say, well, when are these cops going to leave so we can go back to the party? Now, I'm not sure who was standing up there and if any of the victims or surviving roommates lived in the house at that point. But that very next month, when Bryan moved to town, and I believe he moved there Saturday, June 25th, the day he moved west from Pennsylvania, the day his mom was bemoaning the fact that he left home. How soon after June 25th did he find that 1122 King Road house? And how did he find it? So many things the affidavit doesn't tell us. It tells us he was watching that home at least probably a dozen times, mostly, almost all of those times, at nighttime. I wonder, was he watching on September 2nd? At approximately 12:28 a.m., when cops responded to the area of King and Queen Road for a report of a noise complaint of a home playing country music really loudly. It kind of almost made me smile when you saw Kaylee's dad speaking in an interview about her love of country music. I'm not sure if Kaylee was home that night. We know that Xana Kernodle answered the door, and you could see a different woman up near the patio sliding glass door area. I'm not sure if that was Bethany or her lookalike. But here's footage that I got directly from Moscow Police Department and not anywhere else.
I hear music. I can't tell where it's coming from. Same people as before?
No, he's this house right here in front of us. They're in the back.
I think it's the same one.
Huh?
I think it's the same one.
Yeah.
$40.78. It's going to be this 1222, or correction, 1122 Queen Road up here. I got it. Hey guys, Moscow PD. Hey, turn the music down. Turn the music down. Hey guys, second time. I need somebody to come to the door.
Alright, we'll get someone to come in.
Music stays off. Party's over.
Yes, sir.
Same place we were earlier. What was the name of the gal you talked to?
Megan.
Megan?
Have her information. Have her cell phone number, too.
Why don't you call her? Tell her she's here to come outside. Yeah.
I don't have her phone number.
Huh?
I don't have her phone number.
Didn't you call her?
No, I don't have it.
Oh, that's right. You talked to her on somebody else's
Yep,
phone, huh?
someone else's phone. I failed to ask for that quite bad.
Hello, miss.
Hello.
What's your name?
Xana.
Xana, do you live here?
Yes.
Okay, did Megan talk to you earlier?
No.
Okay, does Megan live here?
Megan. I do not have a Megan that lives
Megan Mogan?
here. Maddie Mogan, yes.
Madison Mogan? Yeah.
Madison Mogan? Okay, she does live here?
Sorry, she is at the club. She's 21. I'm just going to bed. I have a couple friends over, but
Okay.
this is my ID.
Have you talked to Maddie tonight?
Yes, I have.
Well-
She's at the corner club.
Okay. Did she tell you anything about anything that happened earlier or anything like that?
Honestly, not really. I've just been here the past hour.
Okay. Okay.
Just trying to go to bed.
Can I grab your ID from me? If you will
Yeah,
run her.
I'm not 21.
Okay.
My roommates are 21. I just came to go to bed.
We're not here to talk about the alcohol stuff, okay?
Okay, yeah.
But this is the second noise complaint we've had here tonight within 2 hours.
I'm sorry
Okay.
about that.
So this time it was the blonde gal and the guy on the back porch playing music. Okay. So
I sincerely apologize about
Okay.
that. I'm just going to bed.
Okay.
So,
so just so you understand, you could be getting a misdemeanor citation for this, which means you have to go in front of a judge and explain why you couldn't keep the people in your house quiet.
okay.
Okay? We've already talked to Maddie once and told her the same thing. Okay? The only reason she's not getting a ticket is because she's not standing here in front of me. But I'm telling you right now, if we have to come back, you're getting a ticket.
Okay. So
you
I'm
will have to
not
go
right
see a
now.
judge.
I'm fine right now.
You're not getting a ticket right now.
I'm just trying to go to bed right
Okay.
now. I mean, I understand you guys.
Mm-hmm.
You're coming here. I'm just going to bed.
Okay. Well, understand that you're responsible for the residents.
Okay.
So whoever else is here, if they have a safe way to get home, you need to kick them out. Or
Okay.
tell them to come inside and be quiet.
Okay.
Because the houses that are on this hill all the way around here, we can hear you from clear down the road when we were coming up here. We can hear the music.
Okay.
And that's
I'm so sorry.
we're
about
past the
that.
point of having polite conversations, okay?
Yeah,
Because
I'm so
neighbors are being
sorry.
kept up. Okay?
I'm sorry. It's just like, yeah.
So
The blonde gal and the guy up there, are they roommates too?
I'm sorry, what?
The blonde gal and the guy that's upstairs, are they roommates too?
None of my roommates are home. I'm the only one home.
Well, so
These
they
are
found
all my
six.
friends.
Okay.
okay. So do you understand 100%
I understand.
what's going to
I'm just
happen?
going to tell everyone, get the fuck, sorry,
Okay,
get the
fine.
fuck out or figure
Yeah.
it out.
And I'm not saying that you got to tell everybody they have to leave, but I'm telling you, any outside music, any loud yelling needs to be done.
Okay.
Because we're not. Next time you're getting a ticket.
Okay.
Okay. And if you get a misdemeanor citation, the university is not going to take kindly to it.
Yeah.
So not only do you have to go see a
completely
judge,
understand that I've never had to deal with this ever.
Yep. and we don't want to start now. I don't ever remember having come here, so I understand you guys are having to get together, but people have a way of
Yes.
taking the invitation and using it as an excuse to get out of control and be
Taking
loud.
it Advantage. Yeah,
Exactly.
I understand.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I just hope for your sake that your friends don't put you in a position where you get the citation and you have to go to court to defend yourself
Yes.
from your friend's behavior. Make sense?
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
You want to get a good phone number for her?
Yep. And just remember, the Dean of Students Office will probably be contacting you about this as well.
Okay.
Yep.
About students code of conduct
Can I
issues.
ID?
Yes, I have
You
it.
didn't get your
Okay.
number.
What's a good telephone number for you? 1278. You are.
Xana Kernodle. XANAKERNODLE.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Xana.
Of
Here's your
course.
ID back.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Make sure your friends don't put you in a bad position. Tell them it's time to be done.
I'll go-
Okay.
There's like no one in there.
Yeah. It was the two that were around the back. We had to holler at them to turn the music down. So,
Thank
alrighty.
you guys. I'm so sorry.
Nope, that's all right. You take care. Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering if Bryan entered through the sliding glass door? You'll notice the affidavit told us how they believe he exited because Dylan, the witness, saw him going in that direction toward the sliding glass door. But is that how Bryan entered? That's what Steve says he believes. He entered through the sliding glass door, which could be pretty plausible if he's sneaking through. If it were lighter there with actually lights just like these hanging over the sliding glass door, would Bryan have entered that front door that night? Was it darker there that night? That's one consistent theme I see often in plenty of these police body footage videos. I see just how dark it is. You see how the cop had to shine his light to even see what was going on back there. But per the affidavit, Bryan's cell phone used cellular resources that provide coverage to the area of 1122 King Road on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13th, 2022. We don't know how soon. They didn't tell us, oh yeah, he started July 1st watching that house and the occupants. But all of these occasions, except for one, occurred in the late evening and early morning hours. And we know that even where Bryan lives at those step-toe apartments, at least one neighbor said she could hear Bryan up at all hours of the night, maybe vacuuming and doing things. So once we look at his writings here, we'll go over the most important parts, the gist of them. We'll talk about why he was often up late at night and how the ailment must have stayed with him from his adolescent years up until now, him as a 28-year-old. Now, it was August 16th, 2022, when cops were called back to the 1122 King Road house for a noise complaint, and that's when Kaylee spoke with police outside. I find it eerie that just 5 days after that, on August 21st, 2022, Bryan's phone once again used cellular resources providing coverage to the King Road residents from approximately 10:34 p.m. to 11:35 p.m. That's more than 1 hour. Where was he sitting? Was he just sitting in his Elantra near the house, just watching? Either way, 2 minutes later, at approximately 11:37 p.m., Bryan was stopped by a Latah County Sheriff's deputy. So I think that's a great deputy. He probably noticed Bryan being a creeper and just maybe hanging out in his car for an hour and not doing anything.
In the months leading up to the murders.
Close enough that he was touching their Wi-Fi. His phone was touching their Wi-Fi.
But with Bryan watching the house so much, eventually the hunter would become the hunted. At least when Bryan made it onto the radar of cops, in his white Elantra, they started trailing him for days, we don't know how long, and eventually arrest him and charge him with the quadruple homicide. Now, Bryan's obviously arrogant and delusional. He called himself a person with delusions of grandeur. That came to mind when his friend said that Bryan was kind of engaging in some guy talk, and Bryan told him, I can go down to a bar, I think he said bar or pub, I can go down to a bar or club and pretty much have any lady I want. That's what he told a friend per 48 hours. Now these newly found revelations of Bryan's writings from the ages of 14 to 17 are giving us a peek into his troubled mind and perhaps his courtroom defense, I keep thinking. The way he ends these writings as a 17-year-old is chilling. Is this the age he decided to turn to hard substances to lose weight during his junior year of high school? So stay tuned to learn all of his torment that he spilled out online and apparently ultimately turned onto his unwitting victims. So this is how people verified and truly believe these are the rantings of Bryan Kohberger. A verified older email address of Bryan Kohberger uncovered his complaints about visual snow. It's a condition which he gets into explaining how it affects him and his vision and his mental health and everything. A fact uncovered by Hidden, a true crime podcast. So I'm wondering, how is this going to play, if at all, into Bryan's defense? Bryan's defense team is already on it. His lawyer is already on it. The team has already hired a Washington State crime scene reconstruction expert. Ann Taylor, the 57-year-old chief public defender, is Bryan's attorney representing him. I'm wondering, with her track record, what is she going to use to try and defend? I'll say it, he's a monster, I believe. Especially when you hear these rantings. Of course, it'll make you feel compassion for the little boy that he was, but it doesn't make you feel compassion for how he chose to deal with his misery. Alan Dershowitz was on Law and Crime Network. He defended O.J. Simpson, unfortunately, who got off for a crime which I feel he's responsible for. Dershowitz believed that there's enough probable cause there to find Kohberger guilty. So in the state like Idaho, which has the ultimate penalty of death, he was saying if Kohberger was his client, he would try and plead down to avoid that penalty or even avoid life in prison. I already know you can't use the insanity defense in Idaho. I get it. According to Michael McAuliffe, a former federal prosecutor and elected state attorney, he talked to Newsweek, and he said Idaho doesn't allow not guilty by reason of insanity verdict or result in a federal criminal case. A fact, according to the APA, that Idaho's legislature repealed the state's insanity defense in 1982. But Newsweek states the court might still use expert evidence to consider mental illness as a factor in sentencing. I'm not saying if he's found guilty by the preponderance of the evidence that, he's going to skate away with 6 years or something like that. But I'm wondering if Bryan's bulldog of a lawyer, I hear she's really smart, she was able to get someone else off on some type of technicality. I'm wondering if his lawyer is going to look at these writings coming up that we'll go over after, of course, they verify and do their due diligence and figure out if it actually came from Bryan's email address, go over that Reddit post and make sure it really came from Bryan's mom, and they know how to trace things, find IP addresses and email addresses and verify things. I'm wondering if his attorney will use these rantings or writings to somehow say that he didn't know right from wrong. Will the prosecution be able to counteract that by showing, he surely knew right from wrong. This guy knew what he was doing. Carol Lieberman is a forensic psychiatrist and trial expert witness, and she said, however, Idaho courts do allow a defendant to present expert psychiatric testimony about any mental conditions that may have interfered with his ability to have formed the intent to kill, or to understand the nature of his crime, or to know whether it was right or wrong at the time. So this is why finding writings like this from Kohberger is so important. Now, will Kohberger stick with the defense, it wasn't me, I was nowhere near the house, I'm going to be exonerated, when evidence will clearly put him closer to the house? Steve even said Bryan was so close to the house that he connected with its Wi-Fi. That's something we didn't necessarily see in the arrest affidavit. So how much more will come out in these future hearings? And if Bryan goes to trial, will he not be able to claim, I had no idea, I was never at the house? I mean, his DNA was already found on the knife sheath. That's like a smoking gun. So will he ever, admit he was there and claim he wasn't the one who did it? Or will he admit that he did it and just attempt to go for a lighter sentence based on rantings like these? Bryan spelled a lot of things incorrectly, but his first post happened November 1st, 2009, with a list of questions. He has more than 100 posts on the forum. We're not going to go over all of them on that tapatalk.com boards, but they give insight into what he was experiencing. This board is for those who perceive visual snow or television-like static in their vision field. That reads the forum message with an avatar that looks just like Bryan Kohberger, even though it's kind of hard to see his face and it's a really small avatar, so once you blow it up, it gets fuzzy. So Bryan was born November 21st, 1994. So he would have only been 14 years of age when these posts began. He would be soon to turn 15 on November 21st, 2009. He began to pour out his problems on this forum, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a diary of what he's going through. On September 23rd, 2010, he wrote, I can't remember anything recent or anything from childhood. I used to be able to remember everything from my childhood and everything every day for a month before. Now I'm just a blank soul living in the now. He remembers the exact day he got visual snow. I got it September 1st of last year, he wrote, and ever since then I have been depressed. I can't remember anything at all, and I always have this horrible pressure in my head. My mind is never not on visual snow, and I always wonder what a normal person would be doing while I sit there and suffer. This whole thing has made me crazy. I feel like my life is pointless because people can think about times with parents, childhood memories, and be happy, and I won't be able to. Soon after, Bryan wrote, "Something major is wrong with me." Bryan might have ascribed quite a bit of his issues to visual snow. Now, I'm not discounting it. I know it's a real syndrome, and I'm not a mental health expert by any means. I know people who have ringing in their ears and different issues have written about how it's driven them to the brink of insanity, and others have learned how to cope with it. But Bryan in 2011 wrote, "The ringing in my ears and the fuzz in my vision is simply all of the demons in my head mocking me. I fall asleep, but I wake up quickly to bloody screams." Even though Bryan is going to say his mind is perfectly healthy, his brain is fine, he will go on and he wants to find a definitive answer. He blames many things on visual snow, which may have been certain undiagnosed conditions, psychosis, schizophrenia. We don't know what was really happening with him. He talks a little bit about moving and leaving his home somewhere in here because, as we know, we went over his parents' bankruptcy and their financial issues in a previous video. On December 19th, 2011, Bryan declared, "I simply don't want to live anymore." This is in sharp contrast to earlier in the year. By April 21st, 2011, Bryan seemed hopeful. It was April 21st, 2011, when Bryan thought he had all the answers as a 16-year-old. Bryan declared, "I know the cause, cure of visual snow." He blamed the disruptions in his vision on body toxins. Bryan declared visual snow is caused by toxins in our body. They range from yeast overgrowth all the way to fungus, and he was frustrated with not being able to find an exact test that would uncover toxins in his body. He talks about migraines, which are the same thing as visual snow. In his experience, they go hand in hand. He wrote, "Tell me how every test known to man cannot show what's wrong with us. We just see stuff. The truth is, there's no test for our toxins. We just need to rid ourselves of them. Visual snow can be caused by chemical changes," he said. He complained about his moldy house, toxins from sweeteners that he consumed, caffeine, chemicals, and more. Bryan wrote, "I experienced visual snow for the first time when just waking up. It went away for 2 weeks, and then I went back to drinking coffee and going on the PC all day, and it came back. I believe I caused my visual snow by too much toxins from the sweetener I use, and also too much caffeine chemicals. I also lived in a moldy house." Maybe this is when Bryan really began to hyper-focus on his diet to the point of OCD behavior in an attempt to find a solution to this visual snow. He went on and ranting about when something's happening in your brain that shouldn't, chemicals are being released that shouldn't. He talks about toxins in your body going haywire. He said, "Don't go to the doctor for a detox. They rip you off." So Bryan would kind of go back and forth and kind of get into a little fight with people. Bryan was really promoting some ebook, talked a lot about diet, and someone said it sounds like paleo and all that. Another person wrote about athlete's foot. Bryan blamed everything on toxins. He was so adamant that he could find the cure in this $27 ebook. So people started accusing him of being a scammer and just trying to publish an ad for this ebook. Well, he said, I'm not a scammer. I really believe in this diet. I'm going to buy the book and I'll just post it on here and I'll make vlogs and all this stuff. Well, by the end of the year, he had not purchased the book, and I don't think he ever made any video logs. He talked about probiotics not killing all the toxins. You need to do the diet, he would say. Bryan answered questions along the way too. One user asked him if he ever got feelings of fullness in his ears or cracking sounds. On April 22nd, 2011, Bryan said, "The reason I say this is also because my doctor put me on every medication and it made me crazy, and my visual snow not even improved." He claimed, "I care about everyone here. I wouldn't tell you something unless I knew it was for sure." So even at that point as a 16-year-old, apparently he'd been to doctors, he'd been placed on different medications. Apparently his parents were trying to get him help. He complained about one making him insane, almost Topamax. He talked about not needing carbs to live and promoting complex carbs and stuff like that. At that point, he didn't even believe in smoking cigarettes, so I'm not sure if he had, as a teenager at this point, he had switched to using any hard drugs yet. He asked someone, "Why are you so spiteful about a diet that can possibly help you?" And he argued back and forth with people, one person who said he wasn't a person of his word. He claimed he had been thinking in depth, nonstop for 1.5 years about what causes visual snow and cures. And he started all caps screaming at some points, like, so into this diet. You have to follow this exact diet. You can't do any diet. This is all toxins, not just candida. So he rants and rants. People kept asking Bryan, well, are you cured from your ailments? How do you know if this ebook diet really works? In the meantime, he jumped over to other threads besides the one he created claiming he knew it all. On April 28th, 2011, he responded, I could have went to Philly for this. Another thing that indicated his closeness to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's already confirmed his age by how old he is. He talked about moving out of his house. He seemed against Valium. He seemed against chemical imbalances. He claimed that pills imbalance your brain. So I wonder if he just didn't find the right medication to treat whatever symptom he has going on, to treat whatever condition he had going on. He says all the tests he ever had would come back good. It sounds like his family did a lot of searching to figure out how to help him. Finally, people were calling Bryan a snake oil salesman. They're like, look, you haven't created any videos, you haven't given us this book, this diet you claimed 100% worked. But on May 6, 2011, Bryan confessed, I didn't buy the book yet. It's been rough lately. So indeed, we looked at Bryan's parents, Michael and Marianne, filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy protection on January 18th, 2010. That was the second time. So Bryan kind of hinted at financial problems. He clapped back at others. Finally, on May 12, 2011, Bryan opened up a little bit more. He asked, am I the only one? I always feel as if I'm not there, completely depersonalized. Mentally, I experience fog, lack of comprehension at some times, feel like my life is a movie, depression, no interest in activity, constant thoughts of doing away with myself, crazy thoughts, delusions of grandeur, anxiety, poor self-image, poor social skills, no emotion. I feel like nothing has a point to it. When I get home, I'm mean to my family. This started when visual snow did. I felt no emotions, and along with the depersonalization, I can say and do whatever I want with little remorse. Everyone hates me. Pretty much, I am an a-hole. Ugh, what a guy. Ugh. Now, believe me, I don't think this condition should garner Kohberger any less prison time if he is indeed found guilty. This is truly just for informational purposes here. It's strange how he changed from this guy, poor self-imaged, to a guy who would eventually tell his friend, oh, I can go into a bar and pretty much have any girl I want. The delusions of grandeur and the way he didn't feel like a normal person, is that what led him to watch such beautiful people and try and take the lives they were enjoying away from them. He said Topamax made him insane. He broke his table for no reason. He claimed it helped him just writing to people on this board. And he was against smoking weed. He talks about being sensitive to light. We know there's other reports of Bryan's mom, I believe, asking to dim the lights at certain restaurants or such. So a lot of this is kind of fitting together. His pupils were going crazy. He could barely look at light. I felt like a film over my vision, got sensitive to light. And part of me wonders too, a lot of people are wondering, did he even see Dylan, one of the surviving roommates, when he walked right past her? We don't know what the lighting situation was. Did he see her at all? Is that why he walked past? He talked about getting head rushes, his vision getting silver, and finally June 10th, 2011, another hopeless post. I find no joy in life. I feel blank and so generic. I can barely remember even my childhood. As I try and think of my childhood, I become upset and into a depressed state. And then finally his big post at 16. Can you relate? That's what Bryan was asking at 11:09 p.m. July 4th, 2011. I've had this horrible depersonalization go on in my life for almost 2 years. I often find myself making simple human interactions, but It is if I'm playing a role, playing a game such as Oblivion. I can see what's going on. I'm slightly into it, but I can pause the game and focus on my real life. In this case, my life is the game. My old self can be reached by pausing the game, but how? I often think of things that humans do, things I've done my whole life. I feel like an organic sack of meat with no self-worth, as I'm starting to view everyone as this. So that would relate to why he could take a life so easily, not seeing a human being there with a soul, with a family and friends who love them. But he looked at them maybe as sacks of meat. Everything I've ever done makes no sense. How did things get this way? How am I wearing this shirt? Who decided that humans shall wear shirts like this? Are we all just advanced animals with possession? Or is there more that I can't see? I can't connect. I view everything as if I was playing Oblivion, pointless and full of nothing, out of reality. Then he wrote, I'm moving out of my house. So we know his parents did lose that previous house they lived in, and they eventually got another house, the one we've seen on the news now. My last holidays were already lived, but where was I? As my family group hugs and celebrates, I'm stuck in this void of nothing, feeling completely no emotion, feeling nothing. I feel dirty, like there's dirt inside my head, my mind. I'm always dizzy and confused. I feel no self-worth. I'm intelligent, but feel the opposite. I say things I don't mean. The last holiday in my house, the house I grew up in, the house I once contributed to, the house I once felt at home in is past. As I hug my family, I look into their faces, I see nothing. It is like I'm looking at a video game, but less. I feel less than mentally damaged. It is like I have severe brain damage. I'm stuck in the depths of my mind where I have to constantly battle my demons. Am I here or am I fake? I feel myself slipping away. I hear screams faintly, but I constantly battle away from it. What if I let go? Where would I be? Would I ever come back to reality? I try to remember where I originated from, but I can't. I barely remember my childhood. I often fear being 80 years old alone and having faint memories of my parents. Everything I missed out on. I think about my father, what a good man he is, how I treat him like dirt because I have this condition and I can't take it. I might spiral out of control and lose myself in the void. I can't let it all go. All of these regrets I predict for my future self. He was right there. All of these thoughts of remorse. I got this when I was in my stage of discovery. Now I look in the mirror and I see this sickly, tired, useless, stupid man in the mirror. He is a complete disgrace. He doesn't even deserve to live. This is where some people wish he would have done away with himself, but I just wish he would have gotten help, real help, found whatever it was, who would have really turned his life around instead of going down the path of evil, as if that were some kind of answer. I remember when I was 15, I would wander alone at 2 a.m. Everything was so generic. So he's 2 a.m., 15 years old. Did he sneak out of his house? He's wandering alone? Does he mean wandering in his room or wandering outside? And the insomnia theme, everything was so generic. Nowhere felt like home. I saw things that were not there, a different reality. I felt eerie and alone. I died during those nights. My goodness, just such deep, dark hole of depression. I felt like a criminal, but where was my record? I can't talk without flinching now. I used to be this healthy blonde-haired boy with blue eyes, and in a few years I have darker hair and darker eyes, half the body weight. So he has lost his weight at this point, but we don't know if he was using hard substances and just, of course, didn't admit it here on this board or not. A lot of people talk about his hair changing from blonde to darker. We know blonde hair people can get darker and eyes can turn darker, but that's usually when you're looking at like a little baby and you wonder how long they'll keep the blonde hair and how their eyes will change over time, not necessarily a teenager. He wrote, where did I leave off? I try to sleep. I try to clear my head, but the pressure won't go away. The pain and depression won't leave. Being me is this horrible disease that I was given. I think of this as I succumb to sleep. I see a large intensity of black, yellow, white fuzz. It makes my mind fizzle and I can barely keep in the bounds of reality. It is as if the ringing in my ears and the fuzz in my vision is simply all of the demons in my head mocking me. And that's where he said I fall asleep, but I wake up quickly to bloody screams. So is that why he couldn't just, lay down and get a good night's sleep? And even if he awakened, he couldn't just calm down? Is any of this here? Am I brain damaged? No, he claims. Then why am I like this? I have these thoughts All in my head. I search for someone to relate to me. Everyone looks down upon me. No one can relate. As I try to read, suddenly my eyes look right through the words. When I look up, I see blue dots near the center of my vision. When I feel slightly calm, it gets harder to breathe, and I see bright dots in my vision. Nothing I do is enjoyable. I am blank. I have no opinion. I have no emotion. I have nothing. Can you relate? Thankfully, no. I can empathize for sufferers, but I wish he would have gotten help. He went back and forth claiming his vision got worse, but then his vision was improving. He was all over the place in these forums. He talked about moving from a sitting to a standing position. Again, he talked about not wanting to live anymore. On December 19th, he said, "Not one night have I slept normal since, and I feel like I'm trapped here. I've been able to block it out for a while now, but I realize what is wrong, and it suddenly becomes unbelievable. I'm desensitized in every way now. People say these are supposed to be the years I enjoy and cherish. Well, I can't say I will cherish these days," he said. Apparently, he's taken migraine pills in the past, he said. He said, every effective migraine pill on the market he took, and I ended up overdosing nearly 2 times. Off of those meds, I wouldn't consider doing that again, though. So he closes out 2011. After he had turned 17 years of age, he was still monkeying around with his diet, hoping that would help him. Then finally, on February 20th, 2012, as a 17-year-old poised to turn 18 later that year, Bryan left the forum. He wrote, "I have just accepted my visual snow finally. I don't even feel the need to stay away from the forum. It doesn't scare me anymore. Anyone else come to terms?" His final words on that forum are scary. "I feel like coming to terms could be a bad thing, though." What did he mean by that? Just accepting his condition and giving up and not getting any real help? Did he continue to live with this visual snow condition even 11 years later? Is that why he was up all hours of the night? Was he still tormented in his mind without really telling anyone? How did he even get to the PhD level of studying with all of these problems with reading and not comprehending and everything he had in there as a teenager? Did it just amplify and get worse over the years without real help? It seems that way. Well, I'll close it here for now. I am also following the case of missing Anna Walsh. As I record this, she's still missing, although there's a lot of hints, unfortunately, of what may have happened to her. Her husband has been arrested. I'll close it here. I might make a video about that if I can. We look forward to seeing Bryan in court in Idaho on Thursday, January 12th. Ephesians 5:1-2. Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Words I wish Bryan would have heeded instead of walking in the way of the enemy as he is accused of doing. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.